Hi everyone, I just wanted to do this video today to show you a few bread baking setup options. I get a lot of questions about different ways that I use pots and pans and things to bake my sourdough bread, and there are loads of ways that you can do this. This is just going to show you a few options just to get you started and to get your head around all the different types of methods people use. I will presume for this video that you know how to get a batch of sourdough bread to the point of the final proofing or the final rising before baking. I'm not going to talk about how you do any of that in this. This is just all about baking vessels and how you can use them in different ways to get a great sourdough bread. So to start with, the easiest way to make a loaf of bread, and any bread for that matter, is to bake it in a tin or a pan. You just want to grease your pan with butter or cooking spray or some sort of pan release mixture. Make sure you do that really thoroughly, particularly with glass pans. They're pretty notorious for sticking. You ferment your dough as usual, shape it into whatever shape you like. Rolling it up into a sort of a sausage shape is good for a pan loaf. Put it in there, rise it, do the final proof, and then bake it. And there are lots of recipes about baking temperatures and all of that. I won't go into that there. So yeah, bread pan, that's an easy way to do it. If you want to create steam around your loaf, which helps to give you a nice good oven spring, you can use two pans, one on top of the other, like that. That's a good trick. I even use these baking clips. I call this the 2 tin trick. And that's a really good way. You can actually prove the dough in there, so the dough needs to be covered as it's proving as well, otherwise it can dry out. And then you can just pop the whole lot into a preheated oven. These clips have survived many trips to the oven, so they're pretty hardy. So that's one good little trick you can use. The other tip for baking with pans, if you want to create steam around the loaf for the first 10, 15, 20 minutes to get that good oven spring, the other thing you can do is preheat in your oven a long baker that will be big enough to hold your pan. So preheat that into the oven, the top and the bottom, and then when your bread is ready to bake, it's all nicely risen up in your pan, you just put the pan into the preheated pot, and that will create a nice little mini oven inside your oven just for the first 15-20 minutes or so, and then take the lid off. You'll get a nice oven spring, and you can take the whole pan out if you like and finish the bake, or you can just leave it in there with the lid off. So that's another good trick. You can probably see here I've got a whole lot of different bakers and things. The other really popular way that people make sourdough bread is an artisan style loaf, a free form sort of style loaf, which a lot of people for that use a pizza stone or a baking stone in their oven. This is my stone that I have had for a really long time. It actually just sits in my oven all the time, so no matter what I'm doing, everything just goes on top of this, and it helps to create a nice even temperature in your oven as well. So if you want to create a free-form artisanal sort of style of loaf with a nice crust, a pizza stone is a good way to go. Preheat your oven really, really hot, including the stone, and then you can use a banneton or a basket of some sort. You can use something like this and line it with paper, and then put your bread in the paper. You can't flour this one because it's made of plastic, but if you want to make a long shape, just look out for all sorts of different containers that can hold your dough in whatever shape you want to hold it in for baking. So that was just a cheap little basket I found. These are ones I use quite commonly. So if you're using a cane basket like this, you would sprinkle this with flour, rice flour, semolina, any kind of flour is good, but those are particularly good for not sticking. Shape your dough, put your dough into the basket, put this inside something covered as it's proving, whether it's a plastic bag or a bigger container. let your dough prove, and you might want to do that overnight in the fridge, or you know, there's lots of options on how you want to do that, but whatever you're doing. And then when you're ready to bake your dough, your pizza stone or your baking stone will be very, very hot, preheated in the oven. You can tip your dough straight out onto the pizza stone and then cover it, and then you'll get a nice oven spring and steam then as well. There's lots of different ways that you could cover your dough, your bread as it bakes, using a baking stone. These stainless steel mixing bowls are really good. It's kind of like a cloche cover. A cloche is just like a ceramic version of this. It's like a ceramic unglazed baker. So you tip your dough out onto the stone, and then you can just put that on top and bake it like that. That's all I do. It works very, very well. And then, you know, you can use this mixing bowl for other things as well. What I like about this is it's very light, so it's not cumbersome. Also, if you drop it, it can't break. So this is a kind of a practical thing. And obviously when you tip your dough onto your stone, you can score it first, spray it with a bit of water if you want, do whatever your recipe tells you to do, and then cover it and then bake. Again, baking for 15-20 minutes or however long you want to bake with the steam, and then take that off and continue the baking without the steam cover, and you'll get your nice crispy, crusty loaf. So that's a really good trick. You can also prove your dough in a basket, or you know, whatever you're using, and then preheat a baker like this, or a Dutch oven. I don't have my blue Dutch oven out, I forgot to get it, but the blue Dutch oven that lots of people ask me about in a couple of my videos, I do use it sometimes, but it's really heavy. Like cast iron Dutch ovens are very, very heavy. So I actually like to use ceramic bakers and glass bakers just as much, but you can use whatever you like. As long as it has a lid that fits well so that steam can't escape, that's fine. So this is one that, as you can see, is well used. It was a very beautiful baker, but now it's quite stained, so don't use your favourites. That's why I really advocate, just go to op shops, go to second-hand shops, just buy cheap things, buy old things. You know, recycle, reuse somebody else's cast-offs. It's a good way. So you can preheat this in the oven. You know, get this really super hot, let it preheat for half an hour or however long you normally preheat your oven, and then when you're ready to go, just obviously really careful, it's going to be super hot with the lid and everything. You can tip your dough in, score it if you want to, put your lid back on, and then bake for 15-20 minutes with the lid, and then lid off, and bake for the remainder of the time. Pardon me, sometimes with some loaves, I don't know, sometimes I want more of a hard or a crunchy crust all the way around in my bread. Sometimes when I take the lid off, I take the whole loaf out of the pot and just let it bake on its own. This pot is beautiful if you're using whole grain flours like I do, and you don't get, you know, I don't pay that much attention to building structure and strength in my dough. So my doughs, if I just bake them on a pizza stone, most of them would just go flat. So this is a great shape, this one. It makes a lovely round, beautiful round loaf of bread that, you know, has a wonderful shape, and it rises really well, but it's a bit of a cheat's way to get a really fantastic loaf of bread. So there's nothing wrong with taking little shortcuts like that. It's all good, especially when you're just starting out. You know, I don't really kind of have the time or the energy to spend so much time working on my doughs, particularly with whole grain sourdoughs. Because they're not using refined flour, it is more tricky to get, you know, that really big billowy oven spring structure, nice height in a loaf without something to hold it up. So I love the baking pots. Sorry, it's quite hot. I'm getting a bit sweaty. Oh. Alright, this is another baker that I use. I love this one. I use this one with this banneton, which is really nice. I just sprinkle this. Sometimes with this one it's made of plastic. This is a German one. I can't pronounce it, but it's from Germany. I sometimes spray that with a bit of water and then sprinkle my flour, my rice flour, just so that it sticks. It can just fall through the cracks and slip right through when you're sprinkling the flour on. So a little light spray of water first can help the flour to stick, and then I put my dough in, and then this one I tip into this baker, which is preheated, makes a lovely nice oval shaped loaf. I was going to say too, some of you who have seen my older videos have seen my kind of easy method of doing the final proof of your dough in the mixing bowl with the paper underneath, and that's a really easy way to do it too. So for your final proof, you can use a banneton or a bowl or whatever you want. Put your piece of baking paper. You do need to use non-stick baking paper for this. You would spray that with water, as I show in my easy everyday sourdough video. Spray that with water, put your dough on the top after you've shaped it, lift that up, put your dough in there, and then let the dough prove like that. You have to cover it so it doesn't dry out. Just put a plate over the top or whatever, and then when you're ready to bake, say if you're using this one, when you're ready to bake, you just lift your dough out and put it in. You can see that in my other video. That's a really easy way to do it. So, but I'm not using the paper so much anymore. I really am trying to not use any consumable waste materials at all in my baking. So I tend to just put them straight in or bake them in a tin, or use other methods. I think that's about it. Maybe just a quick little word on proving setups. So if you are proving your dough in a banneton but you want to do an overnight final proof in the fridge, the easiest way to do it, especially if you're short on space, is to put your dough into the floured banneton. And I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that properly. My Australian English can't cope with all these words. Put that in a plastic bag, and I just use a little clip like this. Now I know I just said I don't use waste materials. These bags I reuse again and again and again and again. I don't use any plastic bags at all. I don't use any when I go to the shops. These are just ones that I have saved over the years before I stopped using them, and I just reuse them. I actually wash these, hang them out to dry and reuse them. So, and if you sort of puff it up a little bit like that, it stays above the dough so it doesn't get dirty anyway, so you can kind of manage it that way. That's a good way to prove your dough, keep it moist so it doesn't dry out either in the fridge or out of the fridge. If you have got loads of fridge space, you can use something like this as well. That one doesn't quite fit in there, but this basket fits in here. So if you've got a big container, say if you've just got one basket that you use, one pot, and you're just using the same method all the time, not like me, I love to change it all the time, then just, you can get one container that will fit your particular size basket and use that and put that in your fridge, and that will that's obviously reusable and washable, and it will keep your dough very nice and moist and safe and secure in the fridge, or even if you're leaving it out to prove it at room temperature, that works really well. You may have seen in some of my other videos this big roaster. I love this thing. It's almost a bit rusty, but I got this from an op shop This roaster is great. I use it in winter. Because our weather is subtropical here, our winters aren't really cold, but because they're not very cold, we don't have any central heating or anything, so we just shuttle the windows and rug up a bit and, you know, hope for the best. But we don't ever get that cold. So we don't have particularly warm houses in winter. It seems strange, but that's how it works. So sometimes in winter I will put my dough that's proving in here with a cup of boiling water. So I'll just boil the kettle, put it in the mug, fill it with water, put the lid on, and what that does is not only does it create steam in there which keeps the dough nice and moist, it heats it up as well. So if you get home from work or wherever and you want to bake your bread, you've shaped your dough and you want it to get to that final proof and baking stage a bit faster, this is a neat little way to do it. And I guess on a final note, given that I do live in the subtropics and I've had contact from people all over the world, in India and Darwin and lots of warm places, who are curious to know how I manage the sourdough in hot weather. Probably most of you have heard me mention this, but this is what I do in summer. I use my big esky. So this is my esky, it's quite big. I put my bread in here. So not everybody is going to have the space for something like that, but I have a little storage area beside my kitchen where that sits, and in summer when I want to ferment my bread all day long, I leave it in my esky with an ice brick, and it never over ferments. It just takes the heat off the day, and it might be 35 degrees outside or even in the kitchen. It could get that hot. But if I use my esky, that's a nice little way to moderate the temperature. And you can use that for proving as well. Can't think of anything else. I think those are the main points that I wanted to cover. I hope that was useful for you. Please ask me questions. Keep asking questions. I love answering everybody's questions. I'm really happy to help. And yeah, if you've got any other ideas for any other videos that you'd like to see, let me know, because I'll keep doing them. Thanks for watching, everyone.